What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here from DFS Army. And as I always say, the key to getting better at DFS is not just making great lineups going forward, but looking back every single week, looking what we did right, looking what we did wrong, learning as much as we can, trying to improve. The key to being successful long term and profitable at DFS is improving every single week. So here we are, NFL, week 2, week in review. All right, guys, this is the accountability week, and there's a lot of stuff I want to go over in week 2. We do this every single week of the season. We look back, what went right, what went wrong. Let's get better at DFS, and this is the best way to do it. One of the most encouraging things that's happened, I can't tell you enough how awesome this is, and I'm seeing it even here in the comments. Back testing, guys. I see that you guys are picking up and understanding about back testing, right? You cannot feel confident. It's very hard to feel confident in your approach without proving it even to yourself in your own mind, in your own head. So back testing is very, very important. But so I love that you guys are doing it. I'm doing it as well. I'm going to show you some things I've learned or gleaned here, even just sitting around here back testing last night, the results from yesterday for the last few hours. One of the beautiful things about the Domination Station optimizer we have over at DFS Army is you're able to back test. It will load yesterday's slates with the final points in there, and you can go back in. Your settings will be in there still and see what could I have tweaked, what could I have changed to have taken down tournaments. The whole reason for back testing, Kendrick, is how can you feel confident with your approach in attacking a slate or mass multi-entering, as an example? How could you feel confident if you can't even you've got to be able to replicate it over time. You can look back without having to actually risk real money and replay out these slates and say, hey, is what I'm doing actually winning tournaments? Is it an approach that's giving me a chance to win? Now, one of the things that's really important when you backtest is there's really no difference between a win or a top 20 finish in a giant tournament. We want to make sure that when we're making lineups for tournaments, that hopefully we're placing some of them, one or two of them each week, a few of them in the top 0.001%. It's hard to do it, but you want to be in that top 20 every once in a while, because if you're doing that, then that gives you that tells you your approach is good enough that one day that'll hit, and you only need to win one tournament every 50 mass multi-entry attempts or so. And I'm going to show you something about that here in a minute. It's very, very important what I'm going to show you. So let's get to it. Let's get to it, but it's really important. But I'm going to start with my cash lineup this week. What went right? What went wrong? And then we'll move on to some tournament discussion, which I think is more exciting. So on screen, you see my cash lineup, and it did not go right this week. No, cash games is not a back testing. Cash games, what we're doing right now, my man, is for cash games, which is look back, look at the tools we had in front of us, look at what we did in cash, and say, all right, where was my error? Or if you did well, what did I do right? Right? So it's the same idea. You can back test everything, including your cash game. But the cash game isn't going to be running the domination station. It's going to be looking at the tools we had, looking at your lineup. Did you win? Did you lose? Why or why not? So I'm going to go through the players I used in my cash lineup this week. I'm going to look at the lineup that I used in my cash lineup this week. I'm going to tell you what went right and what went wrong, but more so the reason why I played the players that I did and used the players that I did. So as you can see here, this is my cash lineup for NFL Week 2. Had some stuff go right, but for the most part, it did not go well. Now, a couple of reasons for that we can go over, but starting point here, I'm gonna talk about my two running backs that I use, and I'm really happy with the two. So if you looked at the domination, the DFS Army chalkboard, there were two essentially locked in cash running backs this week, Najee Harris and Chris Carson, right? I want you to understand why these two were locked in as cash plays. And the main reason was volume expectations, right? Both players were at home. Both players, I believe, were favored. I'm pretty sure the Steelers were favored over the Raiders, and I'm quite confident Seattle was definitely a fairly heavy favorite against the Titans, right? So you want home favorites with massive volume expectations. Now let's talk about the volume expectation. Najee Harris got 100% of the snaps for the Steelers the week before. It was well known. He was on the field for every single play of the game. That is elite level running back usage. It will lead to good fantasy production more often than not. Similarly, Chris Carson was in a situation where Rashad Penny was out. Chris Carson never has a massively high ceiling. He just doesn't reach 30 plus fantasy points almost ever, but he's really, really good almost all the time to get you about 15 to 17 fantasy points. He is used enough to get there. So Chris Carson seemed like a really safe kind of cash play. Najee Harris was the main cash guy. A couple other guys that popped in the uh, in the ownership projection for potentially good plays. Alvin Kamara was the third highest owned projected running back. Not sure how it wound up. Then you had Austin Eckler, Zeke Elliott, Chubb, and Darrell Henderson. Now, if you look at the ownerships for all of these guys, they're all pretty similar. Everybody's kind of above 10, but below 15. So it's this whole group that you could have really chosen who you wanted. I wound up picking Darrell Henderson from the Rams as my second running back. And this was one of my 2v2 decisions that I made mainly because of a salary concern. I was trying to squeeze in all four of these wide receivers, and I'm going to show you why. So if you go back over to the chalkboard, this was my thought. All four of these wide receivers, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, and Keenan Allen, stood out so immensely this week to me. You know, everybody was loading up on the Dallas game. We know that. And obviously it disappointed, but it was the game to load up on. It disappointed, but this was cash lineup. So my goal was to get all four of these studs in one lineup together: Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, and Amari Cooper. I thought they were very obvious. They had high floors with both Cooper Kupp, with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. We knew that Michael Gallup was out for Dallas, and they were going to be the two guys that they were going to be throwing to. So, you know, if Dak was throwing for touchdowns, these were the guys that were going to be getting them. So why did I go to Henderson? Because Henderson's usage was just as elite as these other guys, but he was a little bit cheaper. Henderson came in at a 90% snap share from the week before, and there was nothing wrong with the play. As a matter of fact, for a while it was smashing because Najee Harris was kind of disappointing. Najee Harris comes on late in the game, scores the touchdown. He winds up with 19 fantasy points. So he just passed Darrell Henderson by 2, but I was fine with that because I had saved $400, which allowed me to squeeze in an extra stud. Now, in trying to squeeze in the extra stud wide receiver, and I'll show you where it all went wrong for me, in trying to essentially squeeze in Amari Cooper, I had to also sacrifice at the tight end position. But I was okay with Adam Troutman because he came off, I think, 6 or 8 targets the week before. He had 6 targets the week before. Good usage. I figured, you know, give me three receptions for 30, 40 yards, a couple points. I'll be happy. So where did it go wrong? So again, that was the thought process behind Darrell Henderson. Now, I could have gone with a different approach where I put a running back. So I could have gone Henderson in the flex and played Najee Harris as well. That was a consideration for me, but I really thought I could do a lot better and have a little more upside with just as little downside risk by putting the wide receiver in there. You see here it's CeeDee Lamb, but it could have been Lamb, Kupp, or Cooper. It didn't matter. So where did it go wrong? Well, it went wrong, number one, because Dak Prescott just didn't do anything. Everybody was on putting Herbert in the QB position. That was the other 1v1 decision that I made a little bit different from the field. I was like, all right, if everybody's going to use Herbert, which they did, 62% owned. I'll show you the winning lineups here. I was like, I'll use Dak. Dak hasn't had a bad game in, I can't even remember how long. He had not put up an 8 fantasy point game in years. So I figured, yeah, why don't I switch it up for Dak? Plus, I've got the 2 wide receivers with it. No, Britt, you worry about ownership, yes, we embrace ownership in cash games. It's the opposite of tournaments. Ownership is protection in cash games. And that was my mistake. So Herbert wound up being way higher owned than I even thought at 62%. So if Herbert fails, it doesn't matter. Ownership protects you in cash games. You can have a chalk fail and still cash. And you'll see that the lineups that did cash this week, what it took was just a slightly better score than even what I had. So if I switch in Herbert for Dak Prescott here, which is $100 less, you add another 11 fantasy points to 124, and that pretty much takes me to the cash line in this contest. Like if you go from 124 to 136 or 135, let's see, where's the cash line? Yeah, it's right here. Let's see here. Cash line 254, 259. Yeah. So I think it's a 300 might have been the end of the cash. Yeah. So a 136, that different. Notice the difference. It's so slight in cash games. The 136 from a 124, that's all the difference in the world. What do you need? If you just switch from Dak to Herbert like everybody else did, if I would have used Najee Harris instead of Darrell Henderson, got those extra 2-3 points. That's all. That's the whole difference. Or if you make a good call at defense like this guy did, where his lineup ain't that great, right? He didn't even use Cooper Kupp, so he definitely should have lost, but made a right choice on the defense, went with the Vikings instead of the Jets. Boom, enough. So you do worry about ownership, but you worry about it in the sense of embracing it. You want to embrace the ownership in cash games. And you know what? I got a little too cute getting away from Herbert for Dak. I think I would pretty much do it again. There's very little I would change about my cash lineup. Kind of wish, had I gone with Vikings defense or, just one slight change right there. Even Texans defense, I think the cheapest defense, I bet that one did fine. So we could look at what some other lineups that cash did. And you could see here, I mean, Cooper Kupp was a must. I had Cooper Kupp in my lineup, but you notice 62% Herbert. You do see people still making really bad decisions in cash games, like adding Miles Sanders and Gordon. And sometimes those guys get rewarded by still cashing, even though they shouldn't. So it's not that hard to cash in these. Continue to embrace them. There's a lot of bad decisions through a lot of these lineups that you could see. So, and they still cashed. Needed Cooper Kupp, but outside of that, could have probably made a couple of different pivots, and you easily get in the cash line. Now, here's something I really want to talk about that's important for this week. What I'm looking at is the contest dashboard over on Fantasy Lab, so props to them. Really good tool that they have here for looking back at last week's contest. Now, a lot of you guys message me like, I've already gotten messages in DFS Army like, hey, I didn't make money MMEing. What am I doing wrong? Right? Does that sound familiar? Hobie Hall, does that sound familiar, my man? I'm not saying you did it, but you know what I'm talking about. I just want to respond to this question, Ted. I love that you're in here asking these questions. I appreciate it. So, so I spoke to over the weekend. I'm going to speak to this game. What this weekend was a reminder that no matter how great a particular game looks on paper, this is the NFL, and games don't always go as we think they would or should. NFL is a roller coaster, Jonathan Miller. You're right. And they don't always go the way that you think they will. Everything about that Dallas game should have played to a 55-point bonanza. But you watch the game, it's like they're down by the end zone, a turnover happens, a penalty, a holding, move them back, touchdown call back. All kinds of weird shit like that goes on in the game, and all of a sudden the game goes on and on and on. Now it's field goals and touchdowns being called back, and you're like, holy shit, this fucking game is playing to under 40 points. The highest total ever, of the slate is playing below the lowest. Like, weird shit happens in football games, right? So you have to. Oh, that's Upper Slide. I don't even know it's you, man. I have no idea because your real names are on YouTube. So you have to embrace the fact in NFL football and playing DFS, we embrace the unknowns. Some of my more contrarian, let's say, friends, subs, whatever you want to, we're talking back and forth, right? In my channel in DFS Army, in the Geeks channel, right? And we do a lot of discussion of strategy. And we're talking about, all right, well, what should we do this week? And within the Players Club podcast and all these things, we have these discussions. We talked about that. Sure, one game stands out, but in tournaments, you've got to embrace that variance. So when you're entering tournaments, so we talked about cash. You really want to just embrace the chalk and cash. And you see here, the evidence is right here on screen that you didn't have to be super different to cash. You don't have to have a perfect lineup. You don't even have to have a very good lineup. You've just got to sort of embrace some of the chalk, make a decision or two that's unique, and that should be enough to get you there. Yeah, a lot of penalties in that game, but that's what happens in football games, right? That's what happens. So you have to embrace the variance. What do we talk about on the Players Club this week? We talked about, sure, there's the Cowboys Chargers game, which looked amazing, but we also talked about Tom Brady, probably, and I use these words, looks like he's going to style for 5 touchdown passes in this game. Like, he's just going to be styling on him. It doesn't stand out because the game doesn't play close on paper, but Tom Brady is Tom Brady, and he's going to style in this game. And if you look at what won tournaments, I'm going to show you this in a minute. Yeah. Or that there were 2 other games, all of the afternoon games we said, or most of them looked amazing, right? We had 2 more afternoon games that looked amazing as well. So if you concentrated too much effort on the Cowboys game, it didn't go well for you. And that was just that. But if you spread the love around, and I'm doing a little back testing, and I'll show you. Just a very simple back test right here. I've been trying different approaches, and I'll show you in a minute here all these different potential approaches. But I've been trying different approaches and back testing. Just say, all right, what if I just did a very simple QB +2, QB +1? I go back and back test mass multi-entry every single week to see, all right, what settings could have worked? What should I have done better? What could I have changed? What slight adjustment could I make? What can I have? Like, who was I on heavily? And is that showing up in my mass multi-entry? Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this run. I must have unchecked Cooper Cup or something. It's my highest owned guy. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll get to this in a second. But looking at different approaches that you can use, go back and back test it. It's very simple. You're going to click on back test right here, reopen it, put back in the settings that you used, some of the exposures that you mess with, and then see, should I have messed with exposures as much? Like, I see these little tricks that I could find without hopefully having to do too much. When you back test, you see it. You can back test it, you run it, you run it, you run it. Oh, that's what I did. I lowered ownership really crazy low just to see, and it took out all the so yeah, I experiment with all these different things, like adjusting the projected ownership cap lower and so on and so forth. But what I really wanted to do today was I want to talk about, number one, what won the tournament this week on DraftKings. And also, I want to show you what you should be expecting when you enter 150 lineups in tournaments. Because to go back to a point I was making just earlier, people's expectations are a little bit skewed. So I want to get you understanding what you should expect when you do this. So I have opened up, you ready? The $9 slant, which is pretty much one of the flatter, like, better contests to enter on DraftKings every single week. Okay. Let me go to page 1 of this because I want to really demonstrate this for you guys. Okay, so I opened up the $9 slant. This shows everybody's lineups from this contest, and I want to show you something. All right, pay attention. I've just sorted for every single user that entered 150 lineups. All right, stay with me, guys. This is very, very important. Stay with me. I've sorted for every single person that ran 150 lineups in this contest. Now I'm gonna call out some names. Okay, JBC, our own Statsational. Okay, down $719. Ship My Money, known player from one of the other sites, down $700. Udical, one of the better DFS players in the world, minus 360. Okay. Forsaken, somebody I see on Twitter all the time. There we go. He made a little bit of money. But Ricky D, money loser. What I want to demonstrate is look at the ratio of winners to losers. Okay, we're going to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 losers, 1 winner. That's 1 in 10. 1, 2 losers, 10, 20, right? We got two profits out of 20. 30. All losers, 40. 50. 60. 70. 80. Let's say this was about, this is 100 total. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 out of 100 made money. 91 out of 100 lost money. 91. And that's page 1. Hold on. Let's go to page 2. It'll get even worse. 91 out of 100 lost money. And some of those people who made money, it's like $110. They just didn't lose. All right. This is the next 100. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. There's your big winner. We'll look at him in a minute. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now we're outside of the 100. So this week, on average, of people who mass multi-entered, and this is a better week than usual, of people that mass multi-entered, 91% of them lost money. I want to flash it on the screen. 91% of them lost money. Now, why am I telling you guys this? Am I saying don't mass multi-enter, don't attack tournaments? No. I'm saying you need to understand what to expect when you enter 150 lineups. Those morons on social media, if I entered 150, I could always make money, everybody. They're fucking morons. It's much harder to make money when you mass multi-enter. The only difference is every once in a while, you will have to bink one or you just can't do it. You've got to win one of these every so often, right? You're going to lose 30 to 40% of your money on average mass multi-entering in tournaments. And I'm not saying you because you're bad at DFS. I'm saying Chipotle Addict, the best players in the world. Okay? You recognize these names. JBC, number 10 in the world, John Statsation, lost money. Tom J, another person who's a known mass multi-enterer, money loser. These are the best players. I could show it. It's actually more dramatic. It's more dramatic in the Millie Maker. It's worse because the Millie Maker is much, much harder to win at. It's much more top heavy. Dude, being in the 91%, of course you were. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, and it's 95% more often than not. So 19 times out of 20. That means over the course of an entire NFL season, you could mass multi-enter and really only turn a profit once. That's how hard this is to be profitable at. Okay? Now, why am I telling you this? You have to adjust your expectation. Yet somehow people mass multi-enter and make money. And the reason is because all it takes is that one time of winning to make up for a whole season of losing at mass multi-entry. But this should not be the core of your DFS play, because if it is, you're going to taste losing so often, you're going to be a sad, miserable motherfucker. Okay? And you don't want to be a sad, miserable motherfucker. So understand that this type of tournament play is great when you win one, but it has to be a small percentage of your play, which is why it's a beautiful thing that FanDuel, for example, offers quarter games and nickel games and dime games. And even DraftKings has a mini max. God knows what it is. I don't get to see it, but I assume it's a 50-cent or $1 game or something like that. That's what you should be doing for your mass multi-entry for the most part until you've won enough that you've established that, yes, I am good enough at this to where every 20 times I play in one, I'll bink one. I'll actually take one down. Right? So there's a 50 center. There you go. So Uppers Lad, my man. Like they usually have mini max. They did a $2 mini max. I fucking love that one. I wish it was still there. They had a dollar one. I like the dollar one. I like them all. I'm wiped out. DraftKings does not let me play in anything like that anymore. I want to talk to somebody. I want to call somebody. So you've got to, yeah, there you go. Refining your approach. So that's what backtesting is about. But if you're not hitting one of these every once in a while, you're going to lose all your money. But more importantly, I want you to set expectations, knowing going in that 9.5 times out of 10, the average, and I'm not talking about, again, garbage players. I'm saying the best players in the world still lose money. Now, this motherfucker made one lineup. How about that? Catch him outside, right? This guy made one lineup. The biggest winners in this contest from an ROI perspective made one lineup. Interesting. So let's talk about now that we've established that, because I don't want to hear the whinge about, hey, I mass multi-entered 3 times and I lost money. This is horrible. Dude, you're supposed to lose money 9.5 times out of 10. You just better hope that the 10th time you're winning one all the way. You got to take first, second, third. You've got to make up for it by high finishes, big dollar finishes, or you will not last doing this for very long. So what if you're not somebody who can win at this, and some people's philosophy just will not allow them to win at mass multi-entry, too scared, too FOMO to fade chalk. If you're that way, don't even enter them. Focus your gameplay on contests that have 50 to 250 entrants that you can win without putting up a ridiculous score. Let's take a quick look at this. Before I want to show what John Galt did here, but he's a good player as well. I've seen his name quite a bit, but I want to show you, and this is 880. This is even bigger than what I want to show. But if we just go to, where the fuck is it? Lineups, and to show you the winning lineup here, a 181, guys. A 181. This is out of 800 entries. The winning lineup. Is this true? Is this real? That's what fucking won this thing? A 181. A 181 on DraftKings won this guy $291,000. Okay, 300K to first. That's 800 entries. You could have handcrafted. Look at this lineup. You could have handcrafted it, right? Okay, Russell Wilson, Elijah Mitchell, I'm cheap over here. Tyler Lockett had the big game. Cooper Kupp, great. Derrick, all he did was get the 3 big smashes in here, and none of them were a bad play. They were all fairly hot. They were all smart plays. We talked about Russell Wilson, so he starts with a Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett stack. Fine. Bring back with Derrick Henry, a classic game stack. Very simple. Played the highest owned guy on the slate, Cooper Kupp. Easy money. And then just filled it out with a bunch of turds. The turds he filled it out with didn't even matter. This guy won $300,000. All right. That's an 880 person contest. Now let's take a look back at the slant and what it took to win it. John Galt. Okay. Show me the lineup. 231. It went from 180 to 231. Now, if you're going to win a contest with this many people in it, you're going to have to mass multi-enter. It's really, I mean, to hit this number, very difficult if you're just putting one-offs, right? You've got to mass multi-enter, be floating around the right group. So let's take a look at what John Galt did. But I hope the point I just made really comes across. An 800-person contest, it took like a 188 or whatever the hell, 180, whatever that score was, 180, to take it down first place. All it took was Henry, Wilson, a simple Wilson, Lockett, Henry stack. Very obvious. Play the chalk. We were core play on Cooper Kupp. I don't know how to be more heavy on him. And then just find some. He filled the rest of the lineup in with turds. I'm not sure if we're talking showdowns. It's a whole different story. Showdowns are going to have a lot of ties. I don't know. I don't assume that those were hand built. People mass multi-enter for the showdowns. But let's just continue on this point. I want to see what John Galt did. John Galt is one of the better. I've seen his name a lot. He's one of the better mass multi-entry players. So what I like to do is I like to say, what did he do? Okay, let's take a look at his exposures. I'm just curious. So if you take a look and I sort by exposures, you'll see that John's approach here is take a look at this. Pretty chalky, right? Did not go over 22% on any player. So he kept his exposures at 20% max per player. Interesting, right? Interesting. 20%. Let's see what he did at quarterback. I want to go by position. A filter by position. Let's go position by position. So what did John Galt do? Again, he stuck to let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 quarterbacks, but not really. He really stuck to 7 quarterbacks. And these were the same quarterbacks. If you look at my list this week, I just want to show you. If I had my Geeks pick sheet open, these are literally the same exact group of quarterbacks that we highlighted as playable this week. This might as well be the Geeks pick sheet that I put out. We said Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Hurts, Dak, Herbert, and Brady. That was the group that we were on this week. So essentially kept it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 quarterbacks. For the most part, exposed similar to the field, except here he exploited a weakness, which was the field was way too low on Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was very expensive. So the field basically said, I don't want to pay all that. And everybody kind of, and he went a little under on the chalkier quarterbacks, which were Herbert and Prescott. So he said, I'm not going to overdo this one game. I'm going to keep it sort of flat. Okay. Let's take a look at what he did at running back. And I think we'll find some interesting things here. So really, again, nothing super interesting. He went a little higher on Javonte. Well, I heard buzz about Javonte Williams all week. He went a little higher on Javonte Williams than the field. For the most part, though, Eckler, Chubb, Darrell Henry. Let's see how much. He didn't even have much Derrick Henry. Look at this. So he went a little above the field on Derrick Henry, but it was enough. And I assume a lot of this was tied into his Russell Wilson stack bring back exposures. Trying to see if he did anything else that stood out, but no, everything's pretty chalky here so far. Let's go to, and again, amazing. All it took was that one lineup. So, again, kept it field exposure on the stud wide receivers. Where's my boy Cooper Kupp? Yeah, he loaded up on Kupp and Lamb by his standards, but that was just keeping with the field, and then kept a pretty tight range. How many of these guys do we have? A lot of wide receivers. Let's see where my boy Rondale Moore is on this list. There he is. So Rondale Moore is a really important key piece this week. Yeah, 9%, a little over the field, but again, notice what John does is he does not seem to overload on anyone. He keeps it very, very tight. And actually, if my boy Scotty Newman was in here, these exposures look very, very similar to kind of like what we talked about in our back test, where you can win these tournaments by not having to really necessarily go crazy on any one player. So it is really interesting to see this in practice. And of course, he went, let's take a look at the tight end position. Again, no one over 17%. Noah Fant kept it really interesting. Exposure is not too super different from the field. Not much Gronk, man. Imagine if he had Gronk. Really fucking smashed. Already smashed. Didn't need him. Interesting. And then finally, let's take a look at defense. I'm still trying to find anything that stands out. But for the most part, if you look at the way John Galt, man, I want to now look this guy up in previous weeks. But if you look at the way that John Galt approached it, and again, he won the tournament. So we're taking a look at him. I'll bring up another one after this. I want to take a look at we'll take a look at another player here because it's really important stuff. But if you look at what he did, again, keeping the defense position generally to 15% max and floating his way down from there. Barely got any Buffalo defense, which was one of the best ones this week. Minnesota was a nice win at 2,100, and that wound up being part of the Nuts lineup. But notice really a lot of exposure to pretty chalky defenses, I would say. Nothing super out of the ordinary. Was a little higher in Minnesota than everybody else, and that really was probably the main difference maker for him, just being a little higher on this one defense that did really well. Chicago as well also crushed, so a couple of good ones. So there you have it. a 150 entry player. A 150 entry player, and you look at what he's doing in his approach, 102 players total, but at a max of 22%, a really, let's say, spread it wide approach to taking down a tournament. I'm going to show you a little bit of a different approach to this. And we're going to go with people who won money in this contest just because that's, feels better to see. But if you take a look at Forsaken, he did win money in this contest, and let's try to figure out how he did it. Let's see his best lineup. Here we go, the $7,500 one. So he got it on a Tom Brady stack. Looks like it has Gronk in it and Godwin. So this is a Tom Brady +2 stack. No comeback. No bring back. Oh, yeah, he did have a bring back. Motherfucker. Brought it back with Mike Davis. There you go. So it's Tom Brady +2, bring back with 1. These are the kind of stacks that we talk about every single week. Quarterback +1, quarterback +2, quarterback +2 with 1 for the opposing team. And interesting, like he did a good job here, especially Mike Davis didn't have a particularly good game, low owned. But the reason it went right was because, again, you had Rondale Moore in the lineup, you had Gronk who smashed, you had and he would have done even better if he just had Mike Evans here. If he just has Mike Evans here, he wins the tournament. He vaults up to first place. Instead, he got Godwin. All right. But the key was getting Derrick Henry in there and Rondale Moore. Jets defense did shit. It didn't even matter. So you see, this is a very, you look at it in hindsight, you're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like, why didn't I play that? Tom Brady with Gronk and Godwin, fine. Played Cooper Kupp, of course. How do you not? And then he included Robert Woods. So that's a really interesting kind of combo that I don't think a lot of people would have done. Rondale Moore in the flex, a great flex play. Nothing wrong with that. Probably had 4K left and said, hey, who am I going to throw in here? Sure, I'll throw him. There's no correlation to that. And then Jets defense, like you look at this lineup, you're like, why didn't I come up with that, right? I'm going to go back to his exposure. I'm just curious here on wide receiver position, how much exposure he got at the high end. So again, went over on Keenan Allen, went leverage on Robert Woods, right? We had Robert Woods was popping for us. Cooper Kupp was like crazy popping for us this week, of course. So there we go. Used a lot of Cedric Wilson. We all talked about him being in a pretty decent play. Nothing crazy here that I'm seeing. Nothing that out of the ordinary. Just it was his day. Here you go. Where did he take the big risk? Loading up on Chris Carson, loading up on Najee Harris. Chris Carson was the big leverage play. Damian Snacks Harris. Derrick Henry was the big one. So what he did was he purposefully forced a lot of Derrick Henry into the lineups, and that was what wound up paying off for him, with the rest of the approach being fairly milquetoast. Gronk only showed up. He only had 4%. He only got him in his Brady stacks, but that's all it took. It only took the 1. What's the logic for having a bring back? That's a great question, Randall, and I'm going to tell you. I want you to envision watching a football game. Okay? Take yourself into the game watching time. Take yourself into the Vikings game this week, right? You turn on the game, the Vikings score. I think it was the Vikings game. They score early, right? And then they get a second touchdown. Like a team is up, or we'll even go back. Let's go back to last week because I watched the entirety rather than the highlights last week of the Chiefs game. The Chiefs were playing the Browns. Week 1. I think so. The Browns go up early in that game. Now, what does Mahomes have to do? So the Browns score a bunch of times early in the game. Chiefs are down. But it's the fucking Chiefs, right? And you know what happens when an elite quarterback needs to play catch-up? First of all, the opposing defense softens up a little bit, and then the offense that needs to catch up speeds up their game a little bit, starts throwing more to catch up. If they're an elite offense, what ends up happening is now they're fucking putting up points like crazy. The other team responds. So now I still need 2 more touchdowns. What ends up happening is when a game shoots out, both sides are benefiting. So the best kind of game scenario for us ever in NFL for DFS purposes is especially when the worse of the two teams, the lesser offense, is scoring early. Now the better team with an elite quarterback has to catch up. So now that team is throwing like crazy, scoring well. So essentially, we're getting a ping pong effect of the offense and the defense from both sides. And so when we're building correlated lineups, you might say, inherently, you might think, well, shouldn't we just play the best guys in every spot? But notice what we see here. Notice what's winning these tournaments. It does not require the perfect lineup. None of these are the perfect lineup. But what you're trying to do is build a lineup with as few as possible landmines. Let's see what this guy did, man. Hold on. Uh-oh. We're trying to build it with as few as possible landmines, right? And so within the lineup itself, how do you get? Wow, he won with the Tyrod Taylor. I mean, and Tyrod Taylor got hurt. How do you like that? Like, can you believe it? This one, 221. This got a 221. So how do you lower the number of landmines in the lineup? Well, number one is you tie in your quarterback with the wide receiver. If the quarterback's crushing the wide receiver, that gets two spots kind of tied in. Well, if I can tie in a second wide receiver and an opposing player, so if I can get four players all kind of tied in together, it reduces the likelihood of landmines. Arizona was the perfect example yesterday. That's what I'm saying. Vikings score a couple times. Now Arizona's got to catch up. Now Kyler Murray's out there doing his thing. He's cooking. Now the other team's responding. So, I mean, max in the $9. If you want to, I'm not. Well, I'll show you. You know what? Let's show you that last detail here before I let you guys go, because this is supposed to be like a 15-minute video, and I'm going way longer than I normally do because I want to get these points across. The biggest one I wanted to get across, and I'm going to show you this again, is that when you make 150 lineups, you are probably going to lose money. Let's do another count. So it's even worse on the Millie Maker because it's very top heavy. Although, in fairness, this DraftKings Millie Maker is actually not that top heavy anymore. They've done a good job of just getting enough people in it to where it's not super top heavy. But let's take a look. Okay, so we know we got 100 on this list. Let's count the winners. 1, 2, 3, and that's barely a winner. I'm not even counting that. All right, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of 100. And one broke even. We'll call it 9. 8 or 9 out of 100 did not lose money. 8 or 9 out of 100 did not lose money. That means that 91 to 92% of the people who put in 150 entries lost money. Let's try this next page 2 here. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this page, 5 out of 100 turned a profit. That means 95 out of 100 lost money. Adjust your expectations appropriately. Here's page 3. A lot more 150 entries in the Millie Maker. Right? All right, there we go. And it drops from here. But again, 1, 2. There's only 2 on this page that didn't lose money. So in this one, hang on. 1, 2. Oh, there we go. 3, 4, 5. 5 out of 100 didn't lose money. So a 95% lose money rate in mass multi-entry tournaments. If you come away with nothing else, come away with your expectations in check to understand every time you enter 150 lineups, you have a 90 to 95% chance of coming out of that contest having lost money. Now, why does anybody ever do it? Because we're chasing the big win. But, you got to win one every once in a while because you're going to lose money every time. And we're not talking about, fish or bad players. Here's Father 3, my boy. He's a fucking GOAT. Sorry, my man. Your ship just popped up on the screen. Big T, losing money. These are names that we know. So these are good players. These are people who have won big prizes. See what Father 3 did. I don't call him out. I know what you did. He probably did very similar to what I did. Leverage. A lot of leverage. Cooper Kupp, good. Robert Woods, great. Too much Herbert, too much Dak, not enough of the rest, right? RB, too much Carson, not enough upside there. No Derrick Henry, no money. That's what it meant. That's it. No Derrick Henry, no money. Too much Donovan Peoples-Jones. Don't want to ever have this guy. He sucks. $95 out of 100 lose money, guys. All right. So I got that point across. Listen, it is what it is. Make sure that you adjust your play accordingly, set your expectations accordingly, and understand that if you just play in this kind of contest week after week, you are going to experience a lot of losing. And no one likes to experience a lot of losing. So again, I suggest balance these mass multi-entry contests out. Hey, keep the dollar amount low. They're hard to win them. Balance them out. Big T is a millionaire. You know what? It matters to everybody. Never fun. Never fun. You always want to win. And your $1 million goes away very quickly. If you understood how much these guys like JBC are our very own. I'm going to go back up to John Statsational, does the show with me every single week, right? He does the game plan with me every single week right here on this channel on Thursday morning. Best players in the world. These guys are putting out $50,000 to $70,000 a weekend in entries. So this idea that $1 million is it doesn't matter when you're entering this many tournaments. You need to win them every once in a while because they put up a lot of money. So it's more of a miracle, like a lotto ticket when you hit one out of 1 or 2. And I suggest that's the best way to attack these contests. Make a couple lineups that seem really unique and different, and handcraft a few if you need to. You don't need to put 150 in. Look who won it. I don't even know who won it, but I mean, look at who did well. Even John Galt. What is this? Oh, this is the $20. Even this guy, John Galt, who loaded up on that other tournament, won it. Looks like he did not max enter the Millie Maker. I don't know what I've got going on screen anymore. Really important stuff, guys. That's going to be it. I'm going to wrap it up for the weekend review. Remember, focus your, again, your cash game, embrace ownership. That's number one. For your tournament play, I want you to embrace and focus on tournaments between 50 and let's call it to 500, 600, 700, sub 1,000 total entries. Don't be afraid of contests that have 50 people in it, 150, 300 people. You can win those. Be creative. And for your mass multi-entry stuff, this particular week, it looked like what won was a very balanced approach used by John Galt. Didn't go over anywhere. Used very smart stacks. QB +2, won on the comeback. He kept it very, very level. And again, cash games, you're just going to embrace the chalk a little bit more, embrace volume, run away from speculation and mystery. And that's how you're gonna get it done. It's not hard to win these cash games either. We'll be back here next week and every week reviewing our stuff. Again, check back in today, 5 p.m. Showdown breakdown. Where my turds at? We got a big game. Packers, Lions. So we'll be there for that. Good luck, everybody. I'll see you guys next time on the Weekend Review.